John Bolduc with the Nebraska State Patrol. I have a number of experts who have joined me today. We have Lieutenant Monty Lovelace, the NIAC. We have, of course, Governor Jim Pillen, who's going to make some remarks today. We have Mr. Jay Martin from the Nebraska Department of Education, and we have Dr. Mario Scolara from the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center. The purpose of our discussion today is to talk about the school threats that have come in across our state today. As you have probably seen from the news release, a number of hoax calls have been received by 911 centers across the state. These events are sometimes referred to as swatting incidents. Some 911 centers have received calls that there were active shooters at various schools, 10 schools that we're aware of at this time across Nebraska. They elicited a number of different responses from law enforcement and schools, as is the expected protocol. We'll get into some of those details a little bit in the presentation, but I want to talk about the consequences of this type of criminal action by the person or persons who have made these fraudulent calls to emergency responders. As you can imagine, with the heightened awareness of dangers to our schools, a call that is discussing an active shooter at a school into a 911 center will cause law enforcement to respond. Now, you can imagine in many cases the schools will go into lockdown, which is the proper and necessary protocol. But think about if your child was in school and it was on lockdown and there were law enforcement officers responding. We have text messages being sent to parents. I'm afraid. We have text messages being sent to parents. I'm afraid. We have students and teachers barricading doors and locking doors. These are the appropriate responses, but the fear and trauma that is resulted from this criminal action is almost incomprehensible. Fortunately, our schools and our law enforcement agencies across the state responded appropriately. There was a disruption in learning today, but the good news is our kids are safe. Learning is continuing. We will gather as much information as we can from these incidents and conduct a thorough investigation to see if we can determine from where these calls originated and hold people accountable. The disruption is over. There is no danger to our schools, and our schools are appropriately getting everything back to normal as quickly as possible. At this time, I'd like to invite Governor Pillen to the podium to address a few remarks. Governor?
Colonel Bolduc, thank you, and thank you for everybody being here today. It's really, really important. All of us are here because our kids are our future, and we do everything in our power to protect our kids. I think that what took place today, a lot of families, a lot of kids, a lot of teachers have been victimized. It's 100% unacceptable behavior. The good news would be Colonel Bolduc's team, the state troopers, sheriff department, city police, our teachers, everybody across our state executed in times of incredible fear and anxiety and tension. They executed to protect our kids perfectly. I could not be more proud of everybody in education and in our law enforcement. Highest calling of government is to keep us safe, and the highest of all is keeping our kids safe. It's the number one objective of society and what we do. Nebraska is the greatest place to live. It's the greatest place for kids to live. In today's outside attacks trying to disrupt us were obviously not successful. I think it's really, really important, as Colonel Bolduc said, that justice will be served. There will be extraordinary work ahead to make sure that who is the perpetrator is held accountable. I think it's really important also that we can't keep talking enough about how it's really important that we recognize, as great as Nebraska is, these things can happen. And so hopefully what can come of today is that we are able to make our schools safer tomorrow than they were today for all of our kids. And I think the other piece that's important is that we really can, and we do have, and we can improve our culture of safety for our kids in school, that everyone's responsible. Everybody plays a role, from the first person in the school in the morning to our cooks, to our teachers, to the administrators, to the janitor, to parents that are in the school. Every one of us are responsible, and we play a role of a total culture of security for our kids. And the last, I think, would be making sure that we just can't talk enough about the call center. If there is any whispering, somehow somebody's going to break, that the number is 888-580-6422 to call in to the State Patrol Information Center. It's really, really important that we hold these people accountable. And I just can't say thank you enough to the people behind me. I can't, for their work, I can't say thank you enough to all of the teachers and the administrators that take care of our kids every day across the state. There's no place like Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Next, I'm going to ask Lieutenant Monty Lovelace. He's the director of the NIAC to offer some more information about today's events.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Governor Pillen. The Nebraska Information Analysis Center is a division of the Nebraska State Patrol, which collects and shares law enforcement information with agencies across the state as well as public partners. School safety is a priority for the NIAC, and we've been working closely with Dr. Scolara, the Nebraska Department of Education, and agencies across the state for years. This morning's swatting calls follow a pattern that we've been seeing throughout the country in 2023, but this is also dates back into 2022 and even further than that. The NIAC first published a law enforcement, but with a recent trend, we actually issued another bulletin on Monday with this activity that we've been seeing in the recent states. We suspect Nebraska schools may be a target of spamming calls, which was the reason we put out this information. None of these were credible, and there have been no security issues at schools associated with any of these calls. We'd like the public to know that the resources that are available to report this of any kind are available. There is information here that we would like to highlight for you all today that gives you a direct line to the Nebraska Information Analysis Center and the number that you can call to give us information about today's events. Additionally, the Nebraska Safe to Help hotline is up there where people can provide anonymous information regarding today. With that said, I will turn it back over to Colonel Bolduc. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Now I'm going to have Mr. Jay Martin from the Nebraska Department of Education come and talk about his role as school safety coordinator.
With regards to Nebraska Department of Education's role in this, we, again, collaborate and work with all our community partners. Obviously, we have some of them back here with law enforcement, first responders, all get involved in training that we put on across the state. We actually have some of these trainings coming up here recently that I'll mention here in just a minute. We also work with Dr. Scolara. He handles a lot of the threat assessment teams and building of the threat assessment teams in our schools. He goes around and trains people in the different realms of that. making sure that teams are prepared, the security and safety teams at the schools are prepared for incidents. That's why things were handled appropriately at every one of our schools today. Every school had a different situation and responded to the information that they were given in an appropriate manner. Really reflects on the training that we've done, again, through the Nebraska Department of Education, again, working with our partners. Again, we have these types of trainings. We have one in about a week and a half. It's a reunification exercise we actually have with I Love You Guys out of Colorado. The reunification exercise is exactly what it says. It's where parents, we're going to create threat situations at this training. And during that training, what you'll find is, how did you handle this? How did you reunify your child after this threat? We use things like SRP. SRP stands for Standard Response Protocol. We actually had that training here just a couple months ago with school districts across the state. We were in the Lincoln area, we were out in Kearney, and then out in Scottsbluff and Gering. What that does is creates common language. That common language, again, helps these different entities that do different things. We got educators, we got first responders, we got law enforcement. Everybody communicates differently in these departments, but the standard response protocol creates this. Mental health professionals, our threat assessment teams, we have emergency managers. All these different entities are coming together to basically get the message across about what are the best practices, what are the best things that we can do to educate our public and to make sure that we're protecting our children and our communities as best as possible. That's our goal at NDE, is always to educate, and we're doing a really good job of that. We're looking forward to this reunification exercise that's coming up again in a week and a half. We'll be, again, in Omaha at Pillen South. On the 13th, we'll be in Kearney on the 15th, and then out at Gering on the 17th. I highly encourage anybody that wants to come out and even observe what we're doing and showing some of those things that we do to protect our kids. We're there to help and do whatever we can, and we're always working with our partners here and making sure everybody's on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And finally, we'd like to hear from Dr. Scolara about the coordination of different efforts around this public policy of keeping our schools safe. Doc?
Want to reemphasize the disruption districts affected. This was disruptive, and people were impacted. But one, nobody was injured, and kids will continue to be educated. And we'll continue to learn from this so that we will continue to improve our response. We lead the nation a great deal in terms of our preparation for preventing potential violence to schools from both internal and external sources, as well as how do we prepare for emergency response situations like today. We have worked together, the university, NDE, local law enforcement, county law enforcement, our state patrol have all been engaged over the last several years with educators, emergency specialists, people from across the spectrum of human services to work together to not only build prevention strategies like threat assessment teams, to also work together in how do we manage emergency situations that may pop up in any given moment. And those trainings continue, and we will continue to learn from all of these situations as they evolve, because the nature of these situations continue to evolve. We're always watching what's happening elsewhere, so that if something were to happen here, we are not negatively impacted. We work very hard to continue to improve our process along those ways. Also want to highlight, you've heard people mention that we're all together on this, and that is an important message. These reporting lines are critical. People may have a heightened sense of concern for safety as a result of what happened today. There is no call that isn't important. If you have a concern, please make the call. Please go online. Please let us know. You can either reach out to someone, a trusted adult or person in the school system, or use the school system's reporting line, or you can go confidentially through Safe to Help Nebraska. What we ask, though, is that we're all in this together, and if anyone has a concern, please feel free to come forward. Thank you.
Know that yet, but we are looking into that. There were similarities in the calls, and again, that'll be part of our investigation. So. Well, thank you for the question. The question is this a waste of resources? The short answer is they are wasting resources, but this is also an opportunity for us to exercise systems that have been put into place to make sure that we're doing the right things in the event that a real situation happens. So we make the best out of a person or people responsible for this. That's one of the components, is the disruption and the misuse of emergency services. So the question is basically, how difficult is it to track these calls? It is difficult, but it's not impossible. We have some systems in place and resources that we can access that can help us get to the bottom of this. It is challenging, but not impossible. Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Lieutenant Lovelace to address that. He might have some more information on that.
Thank you for the question, sir. In regards to that, I guess the warning signs would be, well, number one, let me back up and say this is a trend that we've seen nationally for the last several months. Why it was on our radar this week is that there were local states, Colorado and Idaho off the top of my head, that dealt with similar calls last week. My captain and I were able to look at that information, and with the help of the analyst, we crafted a situational awareness bulletin that we were able to share specifically with our school partners to address that. So when we talk about any warning signs, the fact that we were seeing it in neighboring states was a key red flag for us that caused us to release some information on it.
Great. So the question is, what similarities have we discovered in the calls? A lot of them were very similar, and again, that'll be part of our investigation. Is getting recordings where we can, and comparing notes between the different cases. But everything that we have preliminarily right now is that they were all very similar in nature, and that will help guide our investigation. Let's go here, sir. So, let's see, do we have a doctor in the house? Dr. Scolara, do you want to take a shot at that?
No, there could be a variety of reasons. I want to be careful here because the person or persons responsible could be watching this and rather not telegraph too much. But I think You know, people can do this for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people fancy themselves a little clever. They may enjoy seeing things getting disrupted and trying to cause disruption, seeing law enforcement and educators having to respond to these things. They may also like to cause upset with people and understand that this may cause some upset with all the folks involved, the students, the educators, the parents. And so there could be a variety of motives that underlie this. Unfortunately, because of the technology, we see more of it happening, and we see more of an array of motives.
Okay, we have time for one more. Sir, did you have one? So that's a great question. So, how quickly did we discover these were hoaxes? We're still gathering information about the different responses. Again, 10 different incidents. They all had similarities, but pretty soon, as soon as law enforcement and first responders get on scene, we're looking for signs of chaos and those types of things. And it was pretty easily determinable that there was not an active threat once law enforcement officers were on scene. And in some cases, a standard protocol would be for the 911 center, after they dispatch the units, make contact with the school to find out what's going on. And a lot of times during that process, they were able to determine that it was in fact a hoax. Thank you again all for coming today. We sure appreciate it. And a special thanks to the governor for taking time out of his busy schedule to address this very important topic. Thank you very much.